Is the Percy Jackson series on Disney Plus any good? Hello there, and welcome to today's video, where I'm going to be doing something just a little bit different. See, despite the fact that I am a huge Percy Jackson fan, I still haven't watched the series on Disney Plus, which I'm sure will surprise some of you. But I figured, with Season 2 releasing very soon, that I would kind of talk about why I haven't watched the series yet, and then watch the entire thing in one sitting, and give you my thoughts. Now, I've got a feeling this will probably end up being a pretty long video, as is, so I'll keep it short, and just cut directly to my thoughts before having watched Percy Jackson Season 1. So my thoughts before having really watched the series are that, from what I've seen and from what I've heard in terms of, other people talking about it, the kind of reviews on it, that kind of thing, they've changed a lot. And I'm really worried that those changes are going to be quite integral to the story and change the way we see the characters, which always frustrates me because my thing with adaptation is, yes, you can make changes, but as soon as they start affecting like the core motivations of the characters, the way the characters come across, those kinds of things is where adaptation fails. So a really good example would be Lord of the Rings. They make a lot of changes, but it's all so true to the characters in the books. Now, naturally, with Lord of the Rings being as big as it is, you can't always get that balance perfectly right. But I think they got about as close as they possibly could. And my worry is that Percy Jackson will not be in that vein, that they'll have made changes just to kind of make changes. They'll have made changes to maybe, pander to some ideology or other. Maybe they'll have changed the story because they think they know better, which is weird because Rick Riordan was heavily involved in the series. At least that's my understanding. So my fears before having watched this is basically just that I'm going to be watching this going, wow, they changed that for no reason. Wow, they did this simply because they could, rather than these changes serving the story. Now, to be completely transparent, I have technically watched about 5 minutes of the first episode. This was roughly when it came out, and the reason I stopped is kind of indicative of my thoughts on the series before having watched it on the whole, which was just that right from the start, they changed so much that it kind of grated me a little bit, and I remember distinctly thinking that Percy felt a little bit weird and not quite how he was in the books, and I didn't like the way they were almost beginning to move in the direction for the series. But, with that being said, it's time to see if I'm right or not. Okay, so I've just watched the entirety of Percy Jackson Season 1 on Disney Plus, and I suppose it's time to talk about my thoughts. But before we do, I would like to just explain a little bit about what's going to happen next, because I had this big grand plan where I was going to kind of, script out this whole section and organize my thoughts a little bit better and then kind of deliver them in a fashion more similar to the rest of the videos on my channel. But unfortunately, it's a bit of chaos up here after having watched that entire season in one sitting. I'm not really sure where to focus on and kind of how to take this. So what I'm going to do is, I've got my notes here next to me. I'm kind of just going to talk it over. Maybe try and organize my mind that way. And then maybe in the future, I will, kind of do more specific videos on the problems or the positives, that kind of thing. So for now, I hope you'll forgive me for doing a little bit more of a rambling video this time around. But I'm sure the moment you've all been waiting for, what exactly did I think, having watched the first season of Percy Jackson? Is it fantastic? Is it good? Is it bad? Is it awful? Where does it sit? Truth be told, it was a bit of a mixed bag for me. There were aspects of the series that I really, really liked. There was some stuff that I thought was, oh, that's really awesome. I'm glad they did that. There were others that I really, really didn't like. Other aspects where I looked at it and I just said, why? Why change it? Why do it this way when you had the blueprint of the book? So let's kind of get into that, and I'd like to start with the positives first. So I think first and foremost, I really loved the design of the monsters in this series. The Minotaur looked awesome. I really liked the Furies as well, and the Chimera. They looked really, really good. And they looked almost, completely ripped from the pages of my imagination, as it were. I really, really enjoyed the creature design. I think that was a very stellar aspect of the series. Surprisingly enough, I really enjoyed the actor who played Gabe. I've forgotten his name at the moment, but I thought he did a really good job, and he might have actually done too good of a job, because as much as Gabe in the books is supposed to be, this absolute asshole, kind of that abusive partner that, just makes life a living hell for everyone around him. The way the actor, and maybe, this comes down to direction and scripting as well, but the way he played him was very almost, comedy movie villain, where it's like, yeah, they're being an asshole, but you kind of like them. You're kind of drawn to them, in a way. Like, I enjoyed his banter that he has with Percy immediately out the gate when Percy walks in the apartment. The scene where where Ares is showing on the phone, like, him complaining. I really like the way he's like, I love that, we love that Camaro. Like, there was just things about it that I was like, oh, like, this dude is giving me a lot, and he shouldn't be. So that was a little weird that I ended up walking out of the series really liking the actor that played Gabe and like what he was doing with the character. Just a pity it wasn't maybe how he should have been. Otherwise, I think my favorite scene in the entire series happened in episode 2, where after Percy gets told that, you've got to kind of give away a portion of your meal to the gods because they like the smell, and that like will make them more likely to listen to your prayer. It cuts to Percy lighting like a small little fire in a jar or like a tin or something, and dropping blue jelly beans in to like talk to his mom or like pray to his mom essentially, which I thought was really cool. It was such a nice way, like the fact that Percy's like venerating her as a goddess, that he's basically trying to talk to her in that way. Like, I really like that. I love what that did for their relationship. I think Walker Scobell absolutely crushed it in that scene. I think he did a phenomenal job, and it was probably, without a doubt, actually my favorite scene from the entire series, of just like the moment I can see, oh, the series has so much potential. And speaking of, Walker Scobell really crushed it. There were some things from a writing perspective that I'm not happy with, but I think what Walker was doing, the way he was acting, the way he was really embodying Percy, I thought he absolutely hands down crushed it. He did a brilliant job. And truth be told, I might dip in and out of positives, but the rest of it is largely kind of negative. And I worry that maybe I walked in with a bad mindset. I'm worried that I basically went, I want to see the book one for one, and maybe that's kind of biased me in a way. But at the same time, I feel like that's always how I walk into adaptations. And sometimes, it's met, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes the changes I can understand, I can get behind, but other times not. And for a very large majority of the series, I couldn't work out why they were making the changes they were making. So, bloody hell, let's just get the big one out of the way. In the day and age we live in, it's always going to be the most divisive, and it's always so difficult to bloody well talk about. But I'm going to do it. They race swapped Annabeth. Obviously, it's Disney. There have been occasions where, they will race swap characters from books or other media when, adapting them, where I look at it and I go, okay, but that's adding to the character. That is doing something here. This is one of those times where it doesn't make sense to me. I can't understand why they would have done it. It didn't really add anything. I'm not, naturally, I wasn't sitting through the casting process or anything, but throughout the series, this actress didn't strike me as so good that they kind of were like, oh, we have to have her, if that makes sense. And they also did something that really frustrates me when they do these race swaps, which is that I don't know if it's like the political thing in America. I don't pretend to understand how any of it works, but they will strip away any flaws the character might have when they race swap them. And I'm not sure if that's to be like, see, this minority can do no wrong, or see, like, we can't possibly present this person as a layered, complex character. I don't pretend to understand. All I know is that, Annabeth in the books is brilliant. She is a fantastic strategist. She's brilliant with her knife. But she is ultimately the tactician. And to have her be called, like, the greatest warrior in camp, after they've already been like, oh, Luke's the greatest swordsman, it weirdly feels like they're diminishing Luke to prop Annabeth up, which is odd because the character herself doesn't need that. Her strengths are incredible. Her flaws are what make her human. Like, I don't understand why they would do that. There's also a lot of her just, like, knowing answers that, maybe Percy had in the book, coming up with ideas that Percy might have done in the book, that kind of thing. So it was just really frustrating to, like, watch this happen, because I think, to take a step back from Percy Jackson, it's really bad for entertainment. If you're going to race swap a character, if you're going to say, like, look, we've cast this person of color or this minority or whatever, and then you strip them of all the character's flaws and all the things that make them interesting, the problem is people then naturally push back against it and they go, we don't like this. This isn't the character we love. And then all of a sudden, the corporations or whatever just turn around and go, well, you're racist. And I think that's crap, because really what you've done is assert that you know better than the author or whoever wrote it the first time or what have you. So that was disappointing, naturally, because there was some stuff, like Chiron, I think he did a good job. I think they kind of underserved him a little bit. I think he could have done a lot more. There's a lot of explanations he gives in the books that he wasn't able to give in the series, which really kind of detracted from what the actor was able to bring to the table, which, as I say, is a bit of a pity, because I think he was doing a good job. Lance Reddick as Zeus, incredible. He did a really, really good job. But that does bring me to one of my big complaints about the series. See, in the books, the gods are modernized, yes. So, you got Dionysus wearing his leopard print shirt or whatever. You've got Ares riding his motorbike and being in a leather duster, Zeus in his pinstripe suit. The gods have modernized themselves. But in the books, there's always this air of what I'll call divinity, I suppose. This air of, like, oh, we can't fuck with them. Like, these are all powerful beings here. They are, like, primordial in nature. They are, like, they've got a sense of grandeur, which they just didn't have in the series. I didn't like the casting for Dionysus. I didn't like the casting for Hermes. There's a line that Percy has in the books where he meets Hades for the first time, and he says, this is the first god that I've met so far, something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing slightly, but this is the first god I've met who struck him as a god, like just the way he was. And then you see the Hades they cast and the way he was told to act and all that kind of thing. You look and you go, like, this is almost like a bit of showmanship, or like a car dealership salesman or something. Like, it was, none of the gods had this aura of menace or power, coupled with the fact that, to be blunt, they met too many gods on their journey. I think one of the things I love about the Percy Jackson series, and The Lightning Thief especially, is that they don't often meet the gods, and when they do, the help is almost like tangential. It's not always good help. But because they're not interacting with the gods all that often, a lot is up in the air in terms of what are the gods' will. Like, what do they actually want to happen, not what is being dictated must happen, like that kind of thing. Which, because I want to say you were meeting a god every episode, more or less. That might be wrong for the beginning half, but, like, it certainly felt that way. And that's a bit of a problem. One of the reasons for that is because the gods in the book are very much absentee parents, right? They're kind of, I don't quite know how to put it, but they don't interact with their kids. They're very distant, and they don't really. It's not that they don't give a shit, but the ways they show that they care don't really come up that much, as then, like, the demigods aren't able to see it very easily. And that, I think, for the books is such a benefit, because it means that we're able to kind of get each demigod's perception of the gods, because the gods haven't been interacting with them. They haven't been able to say, this is what the gods are like. But the amount we meet the gods in this, coupled with the fact that they really hammer home that, like, oh, the gods are, like, really shitty, dysfunctional family, like, that's all they are, was quite problematic, because I kind of walked away from the series wondering, like, why didn't Percy join Luke? Why is he not 100% on Luke's side? Which, is quite a problem, because that's the central conflict, is that Luke has seen, the worst aspects of the gods, and so now he's trying to do something about it, whereas Percy has seen kind of the better aspects of the gods. Yes, he's felt mistreated, he's felt like Poseidon has, like, just abandoned him, but he's also seen the help Poseidon has given him, and, what Poseidon's tried to do, the way Poseidon spoke about his mother, and these things have made Percy kind of go, I side with them, and I'm gonna fight for them, like, where you don't really get that in the series. But yeah, so that was a really big problem I had, walking away from the series. Like I said, I didn't like the amount that they were just kind of fluffing Annabeth up and being like, oh, she's so smart, she's so clever. The fact that she figures Medusa out in a second, like, I think it all boils down to a very big problem that the series had, which is that there is a fair amount of subtlety in the books. Yes, it's written for children, and yes, mysteries are at the heart of it, and it's a typical adventure novel. But there's a lot that you can kind of read between the lines. One of my favorite videos that I've done on Percy Jackson has been examining Percy and Annabeth's relationship, and being able to kind of, because the book is written from Percy's perspective, to take Percy's perspective out of the equation and see what Annabeth's going through and how that, like, informs their relationship dynamic and all that. I really love the video. If you want to check it out, it's up in the card. But this series really lacks subtlety. It lacks the ability to allow the watcher to kind of just think for themselves, which meant that the scripts end up being very shit, for lack of a better word. They kind of lead you by the hand, and they over-explain everything, and characters have to know this or that, and it's full of conveniences which aren't really present in the books. So, for example, the St. Louis Arch. In the book, they go there because they're waiting for their next bus, and Annabeth is an architect geek. Like, that's what she wants to do with her life, which, they didn't touch on in the series at all. So they go up there, and while they're up there, they get attacked by Echidna and the Chimera. And, the Chimera blows a hole in the arch, and Percy has this really great moment where Echidna's kind of goading him a little bit, and it's basically like, you're faithless. Like, you don't even believe in the gods. Jump in the river, like, from the top of the arch. See if your father will protect you, but you won't because you lack faith. And then Percy literally closes his eyes and goes, like, help me, and then jumps off. And it's kind of this moment that really cements, okay, like, Percy has faith in his father, he has faith in the gods, he's finally kind of, like, taken his foot out of the mortal realm a little bit, that he was stuck on. Whereas in the series, they go to the arch because it's actually secretly a temple to Athena, and thus it will provide them sanctuary. Which it doesn't, because Athena's angry at Annabeth, which we'll get into in a moment. And as such, she lets the monster in, and so they get to the top of the arch, and Echidna opens a hole that she shouldn't have, because if she just let the Chimera do its job, it would have been fine, but instead, like, Percy's hanging, he doesn't make the choice, he just falls. So, like, it takes a lot of the power out of these beautiful moments in the book, that really make, as far as I'm concerned, the book's such a must-read. And I mean, on the front of Athena being angry at Annabeth, it didn't really make sense, because in the book, okay, so what happens is, basically in the series, Percy sends Medusa's head to Olympus, and Athena is embarrassed because Annabeth was a part of that, I guess. I think they say, like, oh, I didn't stop you, that's why she's angry. Which is weird. But Percy kind of rationalizes it in the show as being like, oh, you could think of this as tribute to the gods. In the book, it is very much a middle finger to the gods of Olympus from Percy Jackson specifically. Where he's basically like, you know what, I've been fucked with on every step. of this quest. I've been absolutely, just messed around. So screw you guys. Here's what I think of you. And, they kind of respect him a little bit for that, but they do think he's impertinent, naturally. But it also comes back into play because Percy comes back to find Gabe is just as bad as he's always been. And he offers to solve the problem for his mom, and he has to learn that he can't solve everything. Which is an important lesson for him that he doesn't learn in the show. Gabe just kind of stumbles across Medusa's head, and that's, Which also is interesting because of the amount of agency they gave Sally in the series. Let's not be funny, I'm not exactly qualified to talk on, domestic abuse and all that kind of thing. But in the books, it made a lot of sense that Sally was really, almost withdrawn. She'd married Gabe to protect Percy, yes, but Gabe's abuse had an effect on her. She was very timid around him because he would hit her, physically abuse her. And Percy obviously didn't realize this. Percy got a bit emotionally abused. But in the series, her and Gabe are both yelling, very equally. It's more of a toxic, problem, especially because they don't explain in the series that she married Gabe for Percy. There's an almost hint to it where Annabeth and Percy and Grover are on the bus, and, she says you're staying by the toilet so that the monsters can't smell you. But they don't explain that, Sally did this for Percy, that she's putting up with it for Percy. So it comes off as both of them being very, toxic to each other. Which I think they did to kind of make Sally come across as stronger. But that doesn't really make sense because Sally in the books was already an incredibly strong character. So I'm not sure why they felt the need to change that. Because it really did make her come across as worse than she is in the books. Which is a pity because she's supposed to be Percy's, safe refuge. Yeah, they also, they show the blue food, but they don't explain it at all as, that's her one thing of defiance against Gabe. They explain the reason why Percy was named the way he is, and that's completely different from the books, which is slightly forgivable because, that was never really consistent in the books either. Same with the blue food, I guess. Yeah, there was also stuff, with Annabeth, knowing Luke's past. Entirely. Let me asterisk that. She knows exactly what the problem is. Whereas Annabeth in the books was just a confused kid who didn't quite understand what was going on, didn't realize that Luke's mom really, had a problem, yes, but not that she could see some of the future. That wasn't exactly common knowledge. And Annabeth shouldn't have had it because she was so young at the time. It's one of the reasons why she's, in the book, so attached to Luke, is because she was so young and so impressionable. Overall, I guess, just to kind of wrap this up a little bit, I was very, very disappointed that they made the change they did because it was so unnecessary. You had the blueprint, you had the books. Why cut it out? Why make the entrance to the underworld inside Krusty's shop? The thing about the books is that it's like the Odyssey. They're just kind of getting pushed into situations because of the gods and monsters and, this. This felt very railroaded because of that. Which was disappointing, man. I think my ultimate issue here is just that I guess everyone gave so much shit to the Percy Jackson movies. Which I enjoyed, but they're really shit Percy Jackson movies. And everyone hated them because of how they changed the story and all the, different things they did that just made no sense. And yet I've seen so many people praise the series for being true to the books when it's it really isn't. Not that much, honestly. The big beats, yeah, sure. Did they see Krusty? Yes. Did they see Hades in the Underworld? Yes. Did the big villain turn out to be Ares, but actually it's Kronos and Luke? Yes. All the big story beats are technically there. But the mechanics to get there, the small changes they did in between, really did just throw the whole thing off. And I'm sorry, but anyone who says, this is a really accurate adaptation of Percy Jackson, it's not. I think they have begun to fundamentally change the characters. I think they've begun to fundamentally change the world. And I don't think it gets better from here, honestly. Which is a bit of a shame, honestly, because I think this was the perfect opportunity to do that. But yeah, I guess I'll kind of end it there. Over the next coming weeks, I suppose, as season 2 comes out, I'm going to be looking at. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to review all of it at once, kind of similar to how I did this, or if I'll do a week by week. I'm not sure. But I think in the coming weeks, obviously, besides the other videos that I'll be putting out, because hopefully I will be doing multiple a week. We'll see how long that lasts. But I kind of want to do videos on season 1 of just kind of really dialing in on each of these problems and trying to get across more clearly why they are problematic, why they are fundamentally changing the story that we know. But I suppose with that out of the way, thank you for watching. I do appreciate it.